And then we can think about the fact that in order to attain awakening, if I myself want to attain awakening, Buddhas and sentient beings are equally kind to me as causes for the attainment of my own awakening. And third, we can think about the fact that all beings have the same basic nature, suchness, Buddha nature. It's naturally present within every single sentient being, without any exceptions, this very same basic nature. It is simply that it is stained by temporary stains, but in terms of their nature, there is no difference at all between Buddhas and sentient beings, none whatsoever. So all of these reasons can be beneficial and helpful for us also in coming to cultivate pure perception towards sentient beings. And if we can remember all of these reasons, if we can think about all of these reasons, then in which beings are truly and tremendously kind to us, then what is the benefit actually? How does it help us to think about these things? How does it help us to reflect in these ways? Well, first of all, it actually reduces our negative emotions. The negative emotions in general, but specifically, it's very helpful for reducing our pride and our jealousy. Otherwise, pride and jealousy and the negative emotions get in our way. They are obstacles that prevent us from attaining the qualities that arise as we traverse the grounds and the paths that lead to awakening. Those afflictions, pride and jealousy, are our obstacles, and so we need to clear them away. And contemplating in this way is a very beneficial remedy for those kind of afflictions. Otherwise, if we learn the Dharma and we become a little bit learned, let's say, and because we have learned something, we become proud, and then we think, oh, actually, we look upon other people who haven't studied and we sort of look down on them, thinking we're better than them. Or if somebody has learned more than me, then we start to feel a little bit jealous of that other person. We feel competitive towards people who have similar learning or experience to ourselves. Then that really, actually, that's an obstacle for our practice. Same thing with discipline. If we're really disciplined and become proud, we become proud of our discipline, thinking that somehow we're better than others and looking down upon people who don't keep the discipline in the way that we do, or feeling jealous if somebody else is more disciplined and feeling competitive. These kind of things, this is an obstacle to our practice, and these are obstacles that we encounter, actually, in our practice, those afflictions. And so, if we want actually to be able to practice the Dharma, we have to avoid falling under the sway of those obstacles. And so we need to really be able to train in and cultivate love and compassion and bodhicitta. It's very important to do so. Training in pure perception is very important for us. It's extremely helpful for our practice. And here, in the context of receiving instructions on this text, it is a text that explains the view and the meditation of the definitive meaning. So again, that means this is a practice that pertains to the tradition of the Mahayana. And we have to bring to mind as we listen to this text, the motivation that we have to have, the motivation that we should have here is thinking of all mother sentient beings, all of my mother sentient beings, and giving rise to the aspiration, the wish, the resolve, in fact, the commitment to place all of my mother sentient beings in the state of awakening. So that's the attitude that you should have when you listen to these teachings. The reason why I'm listening to these teachings is in order to practice them so that I can place all of my mother sentient beings in the state of perfect awakening, in the state of Buddhahood. That's why I'm doing it. This should be our motivation. When we receive these instructions on this text, the heart of the matter, the unchanging convergence of vital points that shows exactly how to apply the view and meditation of the definitive meaning. We should take to heart the words of these teachings, apply directly to our experience the meaning of these words. So hear the teaching, apply it directly to our mind with the motivation that doing this, I will establish all mother sentient beings in the state of awakening. So please listen to these teachings with exactly this motivation.
미래를 보시 톱을 됐다. 대토가 좀 맞지. 내내 달빛을 이렇게 계획생이 잘 잘왔자 맞지. 대화 퇴바자 맞지. 냠솔라니 다니 말이 이제 털 다니 말이 이제 털어야 그 말이 이제 그렇게 되어야 그 다시 심사다 다음 지금 산비면 접해 무슈주의 편도 같이 같이 도와요. 그래서 다 되게 저 대신에 뭐 여가상 책에 다른 단지 집에 가봐도 저기 자제 매매를 때 미리 잡으면 로야만 미리로 보지. 미리로 보지 잡으면 로야만 계획성이 잡아서 membership 왕다 저렇게 배치 맨들 와 쉬어던 게 생기면 냠솔랑 방학이야 냠솔만 빼드다에 출소만 대소사 담아 출도는 냠솔랑 냠솔 나와치만 냠솔 내서 더 가고죠 이 인식이 표현이 생각이 있죠 대소는 찍고 와 대여가이면 대소시도 냠솔랑 똑같이 주지 Dharma 담배 취 냠소나 왔다네 아주 상제고요. 지금 마셔서 상, 제가 상, 진이 시제, 산지 좀 되는 투지니 소나가 아주 영고요. 제가 급사이. 저 급사이 도를 잡았나. 냠내 담배 취 수수도 도를 잡았나. 제나 타와 내가 동생이 교신이. 어때 대대 소상 된다는 소리야. 찹장 생지 많이 따바란 심전담네 산진이 완전으로 지마다서 산진도 지마티 진리 바셨죠. 진리 바셨을 잡았을 때 연립된 거대요. 장여 주된 연연이 실어서 시립성 코르좀 똑바로 다때 진리 바셨을 잡아 상거리 진리 바셨을 잡아 상을 잡았나 냠랜디 디나를 소화하는 수시도 냠소나나 지금 봐도 되죠. 상 진이 시원이 좋아요. 대려 소사 요쪽 상에 남디 때 도시 년도 양을 와 내소송 동안 쇠드면 년도 나라상지가 약간 남 거르는 거죠. 세지 조정 둘라 좋아이 실문들 나 다르파비 주셔서 집을 간증적으로 줬었어. membership 와생 저집이 치든다만 몇대 출시도 냠소가 되니 풀리들을 줘봐서게 별 간증이 좀 사실 때문에 봐서는 다음에 배셔는 미나를 봐. 말벌어서 미나를 봐. 저기 자반 양아라서 너무 먹어줘. 그래서 저 로데 가바 촌은 데를 쭉 쉬어. 제대로 냠는데 난 쭉같이 쩌버치.
The awakened activity of the Buddha includes the awakened activity of his body, the awakened activity of speech, and the awakened activity of mind. These are the activities of the Buddha, the primary ones of his awakened body, speech, and mind. And among these, which one is the most important for myself and all sentient beings to protect us from the temporary, immediate suffering, and to be able to establish all of us in lasting, true, genuine happiness? Which among these three activities of the Buddha is the most important? It is the activity of the Buddha's awakened speech. This is the one that is the most crucial for us, because even if the Buddha is not physically present in the world, if his teachings remain in the world, it's not so different than if he were physically present, actually, having those teachings available. And if the Buddha were physically present in the world but did not teach, that even would not be of so much benefit to all of us. So the activity of the Buddha's awakened speech is the primary, the most important of his main awakened activities. And the words of the Buddha are preserved in the Kangyur, the translated words of the Buddha, and we also have the Tengyur, which are the translated commentaries of these great learned and accomplished masters, and even further commentaries that have been composed by the great masters of Tibet as well, not just from these texts that were translated from Indian languages, but if we look into the corpus of commentaries that expound upon the Buddha's words and the great commentaries of learned and accomplished Indian masters, there are tens of thousands of texts composed by Tibetan masters that expound upon these meanings. But if we were to really try to condense the meaning that is found in all of these precious teachings, we can say it really comes down to receiving what are called the ripening empowerments and the liberating pith instructions. And here among these two, we are in the context of receiving the pith instructions, the liberating instructions, guidance instructions. And this text here is a text which teaches the unchanging, the view and meditation of the definitive meaning. So that is what is presented here in this text, the view and the meditation of the definitive meaning. When we talk about the view, there are different ways of establishing the view. And when it comes to the way it's presented here in this text, we do not follow the tradition of using logic and reasoning and establishing something and then trying to refute it and then coming to decide what the conclusion is using these kinds of methods. That's not the method that we rely upon here. But nonetheless, we do, through this text, through these instructions, come to resolve the definitive meaning of the view and the meditation, the view of the great perfection, the view of Mahamudra, the view of the great middle way. We come to resolve this view on the basis of the pith instructions of the teacher, which are presented here in this instruction. So we're relying upon the pith instructions of the great masters, the great gurus of the past. And that's the method for coming to resolve with certainty the view. And in this way then, relying upon the great wisdom and realization that they themselves had, we receive their instructions, the instructions on the view and the meditation of the definitive meaning. So this text, the heart of the matter, it presents, as it says in the title, the unchanging convergence of the vital points that show exactly how to apply the view and the meditation of the definitive meaning. So here when we talk about the view of the definitive meaning, those of you who study in the Shedra, who are familiar with the studying in the monastic college in the Shedra, in that tradition, you know a little bit about this, coming to establish the view, and you know about the fact that there are many, many different views that are presented within the Buddhist tradition. We speak about here the view of the definitive meaning. That refers to the view of the great perfection, the view of Mahamudra, the view of the great middle way. But you know that there are many, many different inner subdivisions of the view that are presented according to many, many different systems of understanding, systems of philosophy. Those of you who study in the Shedra are familiar with this. You know that there are many, many different ways in which we come to examine and come to resolve the view. You know about the fact that there are presentations in which it is shown that one perspective of one view overcomes, subdues the lesser view, and the way in which we come to resolve which is the higher view and which is the lower one, and the way in which one view subdues and overcomes another. You are familiar with the ways in which one view actually refutes the view of another tradition and so on. Those of you who study in the Shedra are familiar with this. You know that there are so many different presentations of the view and of the meditation and of the conduct and the result of perfect awakening. But here, in particular with this text, we are focusing upon the view and the meditation of the definitive meaning. And that then again refers to the view and the meditation of the great perfection, of Mahamudra, and of the great middle way. This is the view and the meditation of the definitive meaning. And so this text is an instruction in exactly how to apply these things. That's what this text is about, exactly how to apply the view and the meditation of the definitive meaning. That means it's really about the vital points, the key points of the way in which we apply the practice, the way in which we actually practice the view and the meditation of the definitive meaning. And the text begins by saying, to the awakened mind, utterly pure since the beginning, the uncontrived innate, the co-emergent Dharmakaya, which is the nature of all things, inconceivable in number, I bow down by realizing the spontaneously present Guru of natural awareness. Sugata essence is present as the nature of all beings, but due to co-emergent ignorance, they constantly obscure themselves and sink into the ocean of samsara. So to quickly liberate them, I shall now explain the innermost profound path. All sentient beings of the 6 classes, all of them have as their most basic nature, Buddha nature, suchness. It is present within all sentient beings as our basic nature. But that itself is not sufficient for the attainment of awakening. That itself is not sufficient to attain Buddhahood. We need to have the proper support for being able to practice. A human body, but not just any old human body, not just an ordinary human body, but a precious human body, like all of us here have. A precious human body is the support that allows us to train in the profound Dharma and to put it into practice. But just having that precious, perfect support of a precious human body is also not sufficient. We need to meet with a teacher, a spiritual friend. And just meeting a teacher, likewise, is not enough. We have to receive the instructions of that teacher. And even receiving the teachings isn't enough. We actually have to practice them. So this is very important, to receive the teachings, but actually integrate them into our practice. Because the point is that we ourselves actually have to purify our ignorance, clear away our ignorance, the twofold ignorance, and we need actually the dualistic ignorance that we have. We need to completely purify that and completely clear that away in order to have the ability to liberate others. So if we ourselves overcome dualistic ignorance, then we have the capacity to be of benefit and to help others become free as well. And then we become able to really help beings directly, indirectly, and very indirectly even, to do all sorts of things that are of benefit and really can help sentient beings. We all have the cause of awakening. All sentient beings have that. And that is nothing other than Buddha nature, which is present as our most basic nature. But we need a lot of other conditions to come together in order for that to become manifest, fully manifest as the awakened state. We need not only to have a human body, but to have a precious human body. We need not only to have a precious human body, but to meet a qualified teacher. Not only to just meet a qualified teacher, but to receive the instructions of that teacher, to receive from him or her the ripening empowerments and the liberating instructions. And here we are receiving from among those two the liberating instructions. But again, just receiving the instructions doesn't cut it. You can't just receive them, you have to practice them. It has been said that if a shepherd practices, then the shepherd will become liberated. And if a pandita, a great scholar, does not practice, then he or she will remain wandering in samsara. It comes down to whether we practice or not. So we have to practice the Dharma, but to practice the Dharma effectively, we need to rely upon certain key points, certain key instructions that are essential for our practice. So of course we need to listen to these teachings, and that's precisely what's presented in this text also. These key points, key instructions that are vital for us to be able to practice in a genuine and an authentic way. We need to not only listen to these instructions, but we have to trust them. And we have to be free from doubt about them. Because if we trust them, and if we're free from doubts, then we can practice. And if we practice without doubt and with genuine trust, then in fact, the practice will be of benefit and we can accomplish the state of awakening. That's the point of all of this, actually. We ourselves have to become Buddhas. That's the point. We need to clear away the two obscurations And we need to perfectly unfold the two aspects of wisdom. That's what the word Buddha means. Purified perfection. Purifying the two obscurations and perfecting the two aspects of wisdom. That is what makes us awakened. And we have to do that ourselves. That's our goal. That's why we're practicing, to become Buddhas ourselves. We need to rely upon all sorts of methods to do that. We need all sorts of circumstances and conditions to make it possible for us to do that. And one, of course, is to rely upon a spiritual teacher. We have to receive the instructions from a spiritual teacher. We have to receive these pith instructions, but we also have to put them into practice. It is said that sentient beings are Buddhas, but we are obscured by the temporary stains. And when those stains are purified, then our Buddhahood itself becomes manifest. So we are obscured by these temporary defilements, these temporary stains. What are they? They are what we call the two obscurations. One is the obscuration of the negative emotions, and the other is the cognitive obscuration. The obscuration of the negative emotions is just our regular old negative emotions, our afflictions. There are 6 root negative emotions that are often enumerated, and 20 subsidiary ones. These themselves, these negative emotions themselves, are our obscuration. And then the cognitive obscuration refers to holding on to concepts related to the 3 spheres of subject, object, and action. And we need to purify those 2 obscurations along with the habits, the habitual tendencies that we have that are associated with them. These we need to fully and completely purify. And when we do that, if we practice genuinely, then in fact that's precisely what happens. We purify the 2 obscurations, so then we become purified, and we perfect the 2 aspects of wisdom, and that is what makes us Buddhas, in fact. So in this way, purifying the 2 obscurations, the word in Tibetan for Buddha is Sangye. Sang means to purify the 2 obscurations. Gye means to unfold or perfect the 2 aspects of wisdom. And so when we do these things, we ourselves become Sangye, we become Buddhas. And that is the purpose, that is the point behind our practice. With dread for the painful abyss of the lower realms, our text continues, without attachment to the errant paths, nor to the peace of the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas. So the state of the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas is a state of peace. We don't want to become attached to that. And with the wish to attain perfect Buddhahood in a single lifetime, wise and fortunate ones, engage yourself in this practice. So the wish to attain perfect Buddhahood in a single lifetime, we actually have many examples of great beings who have done that. In the past in India, in the past in Tibet, through receiving the empowerments, the ripening empowerments from their gurus, through receiving the liberating pith instructions, then they put these teachings into practice. Countless masters of the past have put these teachings into practice. And on that basis, through that practice, they have achieved accomplishment. They have achieved awakening. We can look to examples of masters of the past like Milarepa, like the example of Marpa, the 25 disciples of Guru Rinpoche, so many, countless beings actually we can look to as examples of those who have put these kind of instructions into practice, and through practicing these instructions have attained accomplishment within their lives. So, wise and most fortunate ones, engage yourself in this practice.